Right now, a machine is deciding whether you keep your paycheck, and it doesn't even know your name. Fox Business says AI is about to shrink the wage gap and boost pay for the lowest earners. The IMF is saying the exact same thing in Fortune. The Economist just brushed off the entire idea that AI is taking anyone's job. Meanwhile, if you're under 30 and actually job hunting right now, none of that matches what you're living through. There's a formula economists have trusted for over a century to predict what happens to wages when technology improves. It's called marginal productivity, and it says something simple. If a worker becomes more valuable, competition forces employers to pay them more, or somebody else poaches them. By that logic, AI should be making every paycheck in America bigger, not smaller. But right now, companies are quietly deciding they don't need that junior analyst, that entry-level coder, that first-year associate, because a chatbot does 60% of the job for free. So which is it? Does better technology always mean better pay? Or is that one of the most dangerous assumptions in modern economics? We don't need a prediction to answer that. We need a receipt. And America already wrote one 150 years ago during the most violent wage experiment this country ever ran. It's called the Gilded Age, and it proves something almost everyone making confident claims about AI right now has completely forgotten. In the late 1800s, American industrial output exploded. Steel production, oil refining, railroads, productivity numbers that would make a modern economist weep with joy. Men like Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt built fortunes so massive that adjusted for inflation, some of them still dwarf today's tech billionaires. And the workers who generated all of that output, they were living in tenement slums, working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, for wages that barely covered rent and bread. This is the part that breaks the marginal productivity theory completely. Output per worker was skyrocketing. Pay wasn't following, not even close. Take the garment industry in New York. Workers, many of them teenagers, many of them immigrants, were locked inside factory floors during their shifts to stop them from taking unauthorized breaks. In 1911, a fire broke out at one of these factories. The exits were bolted shut. 146 people died, many by jumping from the windows rather than burning. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire became the moment America could no longer pretend prosperity was trickling down on its own. So if productivity was surging and pay wasn't moving, where did all that extra value actually go? It went straight to the people who own the machines, the factories, and the railroads, not to the people running them. And here's the uncomfortable question this raises about AI. If the tool getting smarter belongs entirely to the company deploying it, not to the employee using it, why would we assume the payoff gets shared this time either? Because it took nearly 70 years, multiple violent strikes, and a labor movement built out of sheer desperation before American wages started catching up with American output. It wasn't automatic. It wasn't the free market quietly correcting itself. It was people organizing, refusing to work, and forcing the issue. Sound familiar yet? So what actually changed? What finally forced American wages to catch up with American productivity? Not innovation, not some new invention that made bosses generous. It was the 1930s and 40s, the New Deal, the rise of powerful unions, and a wave of taxation on the ultra-wealthy that would sound radical if any politician proposed it today. Combine that with the economic reshuffling after World War II, and for the first time in American history, an ordinary factory worker could buy a home, send a kid to college, and retire without fear. That's the version of the American dream most of us grew up hearing about. What almost nobody mentions is that it took nearly a century of raw output growth before regular people saw a dime of it. And it only happened because they forced the issue. Now here's where it gets interesting for AI, because there's a piece of this puzzle even economists tend to skip. Growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. A company can only expand production as fast as someone is willing to buy what it's selling. There's an old, possibly made-up story about Henry Ford walking a union rep through his factory, bragging about all his new machines, saying, "Good luck getting these robots to pay union dues." The union rep supposedly shot back, "Good luck getting them to buy your cars." That's the piece missing from every rosy AI prediction. If AI replaces enough paychecks, who exactly is left to buy anything? You can automate all the production you want, but production without customers is just inventory sitting in a warehouse. And right now, the American middle class isn't sitting on some untapped well of spare cash, waiting to unleash a spending boom the moment AI makes things cheaper. Wages have been squeezed for years. Household debt is already stretched. The people with room to spend more are the ones at the very top. And they don't buy proportionally more chicken sandwiches or car insurance just because they get richer. Back in the 1930s, the economist John Maynard Keynes made a prediction that sounds almost comedic today. He said that within 100 years, growing productivity would let our grandchildren work 15-hour weeks. 2, maybe 3 days on the clock, and the rest of your life free. We are past that 100-year mark now, and most working Americans are logging longer hours than their grandparents did, not shorter ones. Even with dishwashers, computers, and now AI doing more of the heavy lifting than Keynes could have dreamed of. So what broke his math? Ownership. Keynes was imagining a world where productivity gains landed on everyone roughly evenly. That's not the economy we live in. When the tools driving that productivity, the factories, the code, the data centers running the AI models, belong to a small ownership class, and everyone else is renting their existence from that class through mortgages, rent, student debt, and credit cards. Working harder isn't optional. It's the price of staying afloat. You can't respond to a productivity boom by working less, when working is the only thing standing between you and losing your apartment. Which brings us back to the real question buried under every AI headline. It was never really about whether the technology is good or bad. It's about who owns it, and whether the people using it have enough leverage to demand their share of what it produces. History already ran this experiment. The Gilded Age proved that raw productivity growth, left alone, concentrates wealth at the top for generations before anything trickles down, if it ever does. It took organizing, strikes, and political pressure to force that money back down to the people actually doing the work. So will AI raise your wages or gut them? The honest answer is that the technology itself isn't going to decide that. The balance of power between labor and capital will, and that balance has never shifted on its own, not once in American history. It's shifted because people forced it to. The last generation that pulled this off started with nothing and built the closest thing to economic fairness this country has ever seen. The question now is whether this one is paying attention.